Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walker. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, August 15th, 2018, and we might actually have a show for you. I think we are scrambling, literally as we speak, to try and make up for a failure of our Skype connection, which we would usually use to connect with Greg Dworkin. And until we get that hammered out, we might just remember between the two of us how to make Google Hangouts work and use that as an alternative. And, I guess I'll still have Skype open. I guess the only problem I will have if we go that route is if Armando calls in to tell Greg he's wrong, but he calls in Skype, Greg won't know that he's wrong unless I read to him over Google Hangouts, or I guess via our streaming radio feed. I think we have one of those going, too, that he's wrong. How will we make this connection? I don't know. I don't think we can patch him between the two. But we'll be able, I think, to engineer a show. Redundant systems. It sounds like a great idea. If only we had planned it that way, then we would be able to take credit for it. There are a couple other apps we might have attempted to use at some point. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. And it's making my screens a little bit confusing, of course. Just a little difficult to use. And I think I've got it so that I have the sounds turned off in the right places, but we'll see. It could be a very noisy show, and but it could be a very interesting one. So a great learning experience due for us, no doubt. And let's see, I have to also do some quick clicking around to make sure I can open up all the rest of my resources and share the stories I have set aside for you. Exciting day. Lots happening, lots to catch up on, lots of esoterica we could fill in the cracks in between the major stories of the day with, and any number of directions we could go in. And of course, is Wednesday. That means there were plenty of primaries happening around the country yesterday. Lots of news to round up from them, including the primary right there in your own hometown, right, Greg? When it's very interesting, of course. Well, I'll leave that one on the table for now. We'll pick that one up, no doubt, and we'll talk about how awesome it is that we've been talking about that race already, because it was one of the featured results in the morning's news, and you were alerted to it here by Greg, I don't know, like a week, maybe two, even, maybe 3 weeks ago, possibly, 7 months, 8 weeks, 12 years. We told you 12 years ago. We told you that, first of all, U.S. Steel would be opening up 8 plants, just like the president says they did, and that the result of last night would obtain. Not that I have those results at my fingertips. That's what Greg's got for you. And in a couple of minutes, we'll try the crapshoot of of Google Hangouts. In the meantime, let's see. Much in the news today. Also something we've been discussing for a long time, though not in the context of Elizabeth Warren, her potential run for president, and now her plan to save capitalism, which sounds like possibly a good idea, but not everybody's going to be on board here. But okay, the idea of improving capitalism certainly sounds like a good one. And it sounds kind of familiar, at least in one of the main pitches. I am sure that there are more complex parts in there that we didn't even begin to think of. But it is interesting that one of the main features discussed in this Vox.com explainer, and of course the first page is who is Elizabeth Warren, what does the name Elizabeth mean, etc., just to get you up to speed. But Matthew Iglesias says she's unveiling a bill to make corporate governance great again. I'm a little tired of that construction, but okay, he can be forgiven. It's early in the morning. Elizabeth Warren apparently has a big idea that challenges how the Democratic Party thinks about solving the problem of inequality. And looks like really at the root of today's piece is the wild and crazy idea that corporations perhaps might be induced or forced, in some cases, to turn away from the idea of shareholder supremacy in favor of the old idea, the very old idea, the original idea of what? Of stakeholder supremacy and a recognition of the many people to whom corporations actually owe an obligation outside of and in addition to the holders of shares in the corporation, their employees, their communities, I don't know, people who happen to be nearby, let's say passersby on the street, not necessarily included among them, but certainly something we have brought up and discussed in the past here on the show. So definitely on our plate for today. Let's see, what other things have we today? And just checking in on everything else. Okay, let's see. Greg, working on getting things right. You need a phone to call? That is, do I have to give you a name or a number or something? I can't call you? I don't know how this works. Anyone remember? I tried Google Hangouts when it came out, and I said, what a great thing if we ever have a broken Skype. Let's see. Now I'm also informed that we may not be streaming. That would be a bigger and worse problem. Let's take a look at what the indications on the instruments are here. Now, well, it looks like my stream's going out. It may be that netrootsradio.com has been taken out. Well, we're really being targeted by the cyber terrorists today. Need a phone to call. Okay, now what does that mean exactly? Okay, well, we'll see if I can figure this out. Live and on the air. Do I have any? I'm wondering what sort of segments might I have to run while we try and figure out exactly what's going on here. I have a pre-recorded piece here that I actually never got to run from Paula Appanese, and I'm trying to see if perhaps if I can get a brief description of what it was and see whether it's still relevant. Then we can take a look here. Let's see. She had sent me something she had read a while back about from Brian Beutler, which is usually still relevant. Let's see. And of course, the note says there's more shelf life for this piece. Let's see. Well, why don't we give it a try and see if I can't also engineer. I mean, well, then they'll be committed to 5 minutes of that, and if I want to escape from it, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it. Let's see. I'm wondering Greg's question here. I need a phone to call. You don't just use like your in a Google Hangout. You don't just use your email address or something like that. I don't know. Well, at any rate, let's see if we can't. Well, we'll have to tap this out. And, well, could I call him? I don't even know if I remember how Google Hangout was. Let's try it. I could give it a shot. Let's see. Phone call, video call. Asks for a phone, does it? Well, that doesn't seem like a realistic way of dealing with Google Hangouts. That makes no sense. Well, let's see. Phone call. Yeah, that doesn't make any real sense. Well, a video call, we could try that. That would make more sense. Why don't we answer that? And I just don't have any camera on, and we'll just, I guess that would just give us the audio. How's that, Greg? Hi, how are you? Are you there? No, Greg has left the call. That's too bad. Improved call quality. Let's see. Hangouts will improve call quality by routing audio and video over a direct peer-to-peer connection when possible. Oh, I got that. Okay. Well, that seems odd. Let's see. Oh, there's Greg. I can see you, Greg. But then Greg hung up. This is fun.
Hello.
There you are. I've got your audio anyway. Oh, look at this. So now I have an explanation for... We're being attacked left and right here, by the way. Justice says they had a power brownout at his place. So I guess we're waiting to get the stream back on the air. So maybe this means that all of this nonsense is not... Well, oh, no, now it looks like he's back up. So he's streaming. So, okay, I see you. Do you hear me is the question. And I guess not. Okay. Well, let's do the very exciting job of letting him know I can see you, but you can't hear me. That is odd, isn't it? All right. Well, we may have to do this engineering off the air. We may be forced to skip the segment with Greg today, though I could certainly read you his articles, and see if we can't engineer a substitute in time for tomorrow. It was very difficult. I only found out about 10 minutes before air that his Skype was not working. So we'll see whether we can get that back together. Maybe I can try giving him a call this way. Do a video call without the video. Is that possible? Let's see. Okay, invite people. Now I have to invite people to this. This is, well, let's do it. Oh, let's see. Maybe we can do this. Try again. I was another, how could you even hear this? Greg, are you able to hear? Let's see. There was a button finally came up that asked me whether I wanted to allow Google Hangouts to use my microphone. And I thought maybe that would be something I would allow them to use, so for the purpose of letting Greg hear me. All right. Well, this very exciting on-air engineering segment has to end at some point. And, all right, we'll either give it a whirl later on or not, depending on his frustration level. And in the meantime, we can take a look at the various stories he's been sending my way. If I can get those open, let's see. For instance, there is, of course, always a good beginning, the abbreviated pundit roundup over at Daily Kos, and we can run through some of that. Oh, look at this. Top of his roundup is not actually the primary results, though I'm sure they're in here somewhere. Top of the, you'll never believe it, Omarosa has made the top of the abbreviated pundit roundup. Lots of discussion and talk about what she has been teasing / leaking / maybe telling the truth about. I'm not entirely sure. Greg looks like he'll give it one more shot, and we'll see if we can't make our connection work. Anyway, the Omarosa issue I've been kind of poking around in, and it was interesting. I've watched during the day as lots of our usual pundits and reporters and journalists would caution that just maybe the problem with listening to her in all of this is that she might not be telling the truth, and she might not be a trustworthy person, and it's difficult to know whether or not that was worth giving her attention. As she may be making it up. She might be just as big a liar as any of the other people that Trump hired, and this was all true. And I'm wondering, though, given the damage that she appears to be doing to the Trump administration and the damage that the Trump administration is able to do by telling members of the press, but basically whatever the hell they feel like telling them on any given day, and the press more or less being forced to echo what they said, even if they sometimes can express skepticism right alongside the quotations. It's not entirely clear that there's any reason to worry about whether or not she's trustworthy or not. Just print the thing as you do with Donald Trump and his own in his commentary. Is there any real reason why you need to check and make sure that that's true when Omarosa says it versus, say, when Donald Trump says it, and you just say, well, gee whiz, I have to include it in the news. It's news because the president said it. So, I don't know. Anyway, let's see. Just kind of trying to figure out if we can make this thing work here. And I don't... it's very difficult to tell how come this is not able to do the trick. Let's see. I had asked Greg to give me another try, and then the question is, why would he not be able to find me in his... This is a difficult thing to try to navigate while you're actually doing a show. It's clearly not going to work. Okay. Can we create a group? Let's see. Find people. Why don't we try this? There's one of the people I want to find. Oh, look at this. It's going to take me through every Greg I know. Are you kidding? Greg. No? Really? Okay. So that's very interesting. All right. Well, it's just not going to work. We are back on the air. At least we have that. Video call from Greg. All right. We'll give this one more try. How do I answer this? Answer. How about that? That looked like the proper button to do. Greg, are you there?
Hey, I think so.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm going to have to fiddle with the volume a little bit while we go on. But okay, that might actually work.
Okay, good.
All right. Let's try it. Why don't you say lots of interesting things while I try and monkey with the volume. Here we go.
Starting now?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good
We
time
can do that.
Go ahead. Why not have a show, right?
It's Wednesday.
It is.
And that means that it's the day after primaries, and the primaries were awfully interesting.
Okay. Wednesday does not necessarily mean that they were interesting, but that happens to be true.
So there was a huge Democratic turnout in yesterday's primaries.
Excellent. That's a good thing.
We're looking at the governor races just for comparison. Jared Leopold put these numbers together.
Okay.
In Minnesota, there were 257,000 more Democrats. In Wisconsin, 84,000 more Democrats. A little bit misleading, I suppose, because Scott Walker's primary was relatively uncontested.
Okay.
As an incumbent. For Connecticut, Democrats 64,000 more votes,
Okay.
and for Vermont, 21,000 more votes.
That's a lot in Vermont.
Right. So AP had an analysis that they published on August 11th. And they were looking
analysis.
at AP analysis. Dems
Right.
have advantage on election enthusiasm.
Oh, dang. Oh, there's too many. There's no chance I'm going to get back
No
to that
chance.
screen.
We're doing too much technical stuff.
Oh, my
today.
goodness.
Special election
I'll just
enthusiasm.
play it when I get there. There we are.
Enthusiasm.
Right?
That's
Democratic voters are more enthusiastic than Republicans in nearly a dozen federal special elections since President Donald Trump took office. An Associated Press analysis found giving party leaders hope that even a series of narrow losses in GOP territory, and again, these were losses in GOP territory, bodes well for them in November.
That's a lot of voting that's going
With
well.
the special elections now concluded ahead of the full midterms, an AP review of 9 House races and an Alabama special Senate election showed Democratic candidates consistently outperforming Republicans compared to the two parties' usual vote totals in regular general elections. And I think that's really the basic story of the whole election milieu, if you will.
Okay.
Democrats are fired up, and they're coming out and they're voting.
That's good news. And while I'm hearing the sound effects,
Thank you, God.
we'll just throw that one in there too. So okay,
Okay?
why not?
So
All
how's
right.
the sound quality?
The sound quality, well, it's definitely different, and I think I've got the volume under control. It kind of came in hot, but yeah, since I'm not often piping in audio via the browser,
Yeah,
it was
which
set
is
a
what
little
this is.
strange. So now we're all right. Well, I think it'll work out. So
Okay. Well, hopefully things will get fixed on Skype in the next 48 hours.
I
That's
would
about
hope
how long
so.
it takes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, wait till I rate this call.
Yeah,
Oh my
just
God.
wait. Just wait.
Okay.
So, in Connecticut,
Yes.
now let's talk about Connecticut. The primary election in my 5th House district was interesting.
Yes.
This was Elizabeth Estes' seat. She stepped down. She had to. She was a good Democratic House representative and well represented the Newtown and other areas of Connecticut 5 and would have been normally an easy winner for re-election. But she was coddling somebody in her office who was a domestic abuser and had to step down because of that.
Ah, yes, right. Okay.
So 2 people were running. Mary Glassman, who is a Simsbury first selectman, that's kind of a mayor, small town. And Johanna Hayes, Teacher of the Year, picked by Obama, and an exciting new face, good campaigner, person of color. And Glassman was the establishment candidate. She got 14,776 votes. And Johanna Hayes, the new face, got 24,339. So that was a 62-37, 62-38 win. It was a pretty strong win for her.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit unexpected that it would be that strong.
Yeah, people were sort of evenly divided. It sounded like it was a toss-up for
Yeah,
some
kind
voters.
of a toss-up thing, but it wasn't a toss-up, in fact, as far as the election went.
Well, that's there's a message in that.
Yeah. Johanna Hayes actually, truly, without any kind of snark or anything like that, had a lot more yard signs.
Haha! I knew it.
She was
I could've
much
told you
better
that.
organized. She was at the polling places. She just did a better job campaigning. Now, she got a total of 30, or between the two of them, between Hayes and Glassman, they got 39,115 votes.
Yes, so that is some indication of turnout enthusiasm, I suppose.
On the Republican side,
Yes.
there were 3 candidates running. Very competitive election.
All right.
Manny Santos will be the opponent, a true Trumper.
Really?
And the Republicans got 31,394, so 39 to 31 in terms of the total turnout. To give you an idea.
Yeah.
CT5 is rated by Dave Wasserman in the Cook Political Report as a solid D, but it does include parts of the Naugatuck Valley that went for Lieberman, so there are conservative areas in this district.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the fall.
I would say so. Yeah, it's a real interesting one, and a lot of eyes on it. And I saw a lot of coverage. Like the Intercept was very excited about covering this race and casting it as a insurgent campaign, upending the establishment type candidate. She wasn't an establishment anything. She was running for an open seat. I mean, she's
Right.
the first selectman, but it's
Well,
interesting.
she got the endorsement of
Yes.
the Democratic establishment, so that fairly does make
guess
her an
that
establishment.
I'm thinking, like, for instance,
not
teacher
really.
of the year. It's not exactly, a radical place to be coming from. That's kind of an establishment credential of its own, and in a good way. I'm not trying to say she's, somehow less than in any way. It's just that rather than thinking of her as storming the gates, it's a teacher of the year, I think, really taking a rightful leadership position in the community. She's already a community leader.
Right.
So, I guess if you're nervous about it for some reason, you shouldn't be, certainly.
Well-
Teacher of the Year is likely to know what she's doing up in front of the crowd.
Right, and their policies are relatively similar. And just to put it in perspective, perhaps even more importantly than establishment versus insurgent, Johanna Hayes was from Waterbury, and she got 4,000 votes out of Waterbury. Waterbury's a city, and Simsbury's a smaller town. And whereas Mary Glassman dominated Simsbury, she got 1,900 votes.
Well, yeah.
So, if you're from a city and the cities pull in more votes than the towns, then you wind up winning. But more importantly, across the many towns and communities in Connecticut 5, Johanna Hayes won most of them.
Yeah. All right.
Glassman won like 4 of them. Mm-hmm. And looks like Johanna Hayes won like 35 of them. So, it was a pretty solid win. Right. But there's more to Connecticut than just Connecticut 5. Of course, there's the governor's race.
There's at least 4 others.
Yeah, but they had incumbents, so there really wasn't that much interesting in it.
All right.
On the other hand, Ned Lamont is going to be the gubernatorial candidate.
Okay.
For
really?
the Democrats.
Ah, okay.
And that was a pretty easy win for him. He was running against Joe Ghanem, who was a lovable rogue from the big city of Bridgeport and a crook and a felon.
Oh.
So Ned Lamont wins. And then his opponent is going to be a fellow named Stefanowski, who's a business person, a rich guy, also a Trumper.
One of them. All right.
Okay, and that's of note because it's very hard to run a campaign about Ned Lamont being an out-of-touch rich guy when you're an out-of-touch rich guy.
Yeah. Well, you would think. I mean,
You'd think.
There are hypocrites out there.
There are. But that being the case, it's very difficult to cast this race. The stronger candidate from the Republican side would have been Mark Boughton, who was the mayor of Danbury. But he had some health issues, and although more of a conventional candidate, he ran for lieutenant governor last time.
Yes.
And isn't a total Trumper. I don't particularly like him. He was pro making ICE brown shirts before Trump.
Oh.
So, he's got his issues, but I think his health issues really are part of the reason why he didn't win. He also was known here in the western part of the state where Danbury is, but the eastern part of the state really didn't know who he was.
Okay.
Even though he ran for lieutenant governor.
I don't know him.
So, because Daniel Malloy, the Democrat who is stepping down, not running again, is not particularly popular, it becomes a bit of a difficult race to call. But on the other hand, again, if you look at the total number of people who turned out, Lamont beat Ganim 81-19. He had 211,000 votes total between the two. And on the Republican side, Stefanowski beat Mayor Mark Boughton 29-21 with a couple other people running. But the total number of Republicans who voted were 142,000 versus 211 Democrats. Uh-huh. So on the whole, Lamont probably has an edge there.
Okay.
Another place where the perhaps weaker candidate wound up winning is Kansas. They didn't have a primary yesterday, but last week's primary was finally decided.
Yes.
When Collier, the current governor, conceded to Chris Kobach. And Kobach is a toss-up in the fall. So that's another governorship in the Midwest that Democrats may wind up taking.
Why? What sort of breakdown in the elections infrastructure and administration made it take so long to figure out who won that race? Who's the Secretary of State of that place?
Well, that, of course, would be Chris Kobach. And one of the interesting things in terms of November would be his reluctance to recuse himself, giving mixed messages to the people who count votes. It was all on display.
Okay.
So if you needed a reminder of why not to trust this guy, this election was it, even though he won.
Yeah, well...
Collier just decided not to make it divisive, and he said, you know what, I'm stepping down.
Oh, well, I guess that's sort of a good thing, except I don't really care about that guy and those side. Okay. Is our music coming through for you? I'm just curious.
No, I don't hear the music.
All right,
I do not hear the
in
music.
that case, I'll tell you we're about to take our break.
Cool.
Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and Netroots Radio is back too, so we got that going for us, which is nice, and working off of Google Hangout today, and now we're making it work. The first 20 minutes or so of...
We're interesting. I can see you, but I can't hear you. I can hear you, but I can't see you. I can't see or hear you.
I hope you guys like this conversation where I say, oh, there's Greg. Oh, no, there he goes. Oh, wait,
yeah,
there he is.
There he is. No, he's not.
Let's do another segment of it.
Okay.
Not? All right.
So, Wisconsin, there was a governor's race. Scott Walker
right.
won his 91.6% of the vote to a fellow named Robert Meyer. But on the Democratic side, it'll be Tony Evers, who will be his opponent. And Walker's not polling particularly well. Tammy Baldwin is running Senate. She won her Democratic primary uncontested. But on the Republican side, the winner is a lady named Leah Vukmir. And Kevin Nicholson were Trumpers who were vying not to discuss Trump.
That's what else
Nicholson actually went out and said, I don't agree with Trump on everything, and Vukmir wouldn't say that.
All right.
And that came out of all this Omarosa stuff. So Vukmir wins 49-42. And so it'll be Baldwin, Vukmir, and Baldwin should keep that seat. That shouldn't be particularly difficult. The other interesting name out of Wisconsin, I think that's Iron Stash's state, right? So I think he won his.
I hope
Randy Bryce wins 59.6 against Kathy Myers 40.4. And Brian Steele, Steil, will be the replacement for Paul Ryan, the outgoing Speaker of the House. Paul Nealon, the Nazi, got 11% of the vote in that particular district.
Okay, well, that's a nice low total anyway.
So Bryce is not expected to win, but of course, the Iron Stash has become a national name, so that's something worth watching.
So much so that I forget his real name.
Yeah, Randy Bryce.
The interesting, I would be curious to see some polling. No one should really spend any money on this, but I think one of the last times that a currently serving speaker, lost either a primary or general election race, it turned out that the general electorate in that district was under the impression, for some reason, sometimes because they're actively misled in that direction, but they're told, oh no, if the new Republican nominee wins, that person becomes speaker. So it's important for the district to have that power and to keep that power. So everybody go out and vote for XYZ person from that party, or whoever wins, in other words, would hold the speakership. And people actually believed it. My recollection was that's how George Nethercutt got elected to Congress from Washington when Tom Foley retired. The Republican out there told everybody, well, whoever wins the speakership, because Tom Foley is leaving it, and that leaves it in our hands. And George Nethercutt voters turned out in droves, thinking, we can actually make the speaker a Republican.
Right.
And of course, they did make the speaker a Republican anyway by winning
but it wasn't
the House.
Nethercutt.
But it wasn't because he won. Yes.
Right. Okay, Minnesota. Minnesota was interesting. Mark Dayton, the Democrat, is stepping down. Tim Walz will be the Democratic primary winner on the governor race. And the Republican is a fellow named Jeff Johnson, also a Trumper, who beat handily a fellow named Tim Pawlenty, who was trying to make a political comeback and failed.
Was he as a Trumper or not?
No, he was a non-Trumper. He said, I'm running as a non-Trumper, and nobody wanted to vote for him.
Well, what do you know? That tells us something, too.
It does. So that's why I'm mentioning it.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
So that'll be interesting. And let's see. Tina Smith easily won her Senate special. She was the appointed person who was replacing Al Franken, and Richard Painter was her main competition, Republican turned Democrat.
Oh, yes.
76 to 14%. So Democrats voted for a Democrat.
That's a good thing to do.
Yep.
You're a Democrat.
And in terms of the number of people voting, incredible turnout for the Democrats here. 567,000 voted for the Democratic candidates altogether. 299,000 for the Republicans. So that bodes well for the fall. And that's pretty much the story of yesterday in terms of primary stuff. But Dave Weigel mentions one other, a big under-the-radar progressive win. He says Ernell Lucas will be the next Milwaukee County Sheriff. This was Dave Clark's position. He used to win this job with conservative crossover. Clark's candidate lost.
Well, okay.
Lucas defeated acting Sheriff Richard Schmidt by a solid margin after a race featuring surrogate groups pumping out messages and money.
Okay.
So Sheriff Clark going to Moscow, I guess, wasn't a winner for this district. That
is weird. I do not understand that.
Yeah. Well, money's money. It's fungible, right?
True. We do know that. Okay. That's news.
Right.
I like all of these things.
So a lot of that happened yesterday. Of course, given that there's a big Democratic turnout and Democrats are doing well, naturally the New York Times decided to run a Democrats in disarray story today. So Cheryl Gay Stolberg and Nicholas Fandos have a story. Democrats discard Washington platform in bid for House control. It's a risky strategy, they say, essentially putting off answering one of the most immediate questions facing the Democratic Party after its losses in 2016. What do you stand for? The strategy could also raise questions among voters about how Democrats would govern.
Why would it do that?
So they're going local, winning on local issues. Remember that the Virginia House of Delegates candidate who won on traffic and roads?
Yes, I do.
And the fact that she happened to be she was a trans candidate, if I recall correctly, but that's not what she was running on, and that was not important to voters. What was important to voters is traffic on the main highway there.
Yes.
And so the message from the New York Times is that's really risky.
Yeah, of course.
putting local issues ahead of national stuff that we cover.
True. You never want to do that because all politics is national. This is a traditional saying in American politics, and everyone
Which has
knows
been
it.
true forever and ever. And they mentioned, but again, I think it was Weigel who pointed out, it turns out that Democrats are running more progressive people in areas where the progressive can win, and more moderate candidates in the area where the moderate can win.
That is risky, and
it's incredibly risky, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not a good idea, and both sides do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to point that out, and it's terrible when our side does it, and when they do it. Look, it's just tradition in this country, and they're very strong on defense. I just have to say that.
Right. So all
Serious
of that
about
is
the deficit, all of those things.
All of those things. There's some interesting and good polling that's out yesterday, more in a national picture.
Good.
And,
all politics is national.
All politics is national. So Gallup has Trump at 39, and more importantly, his disapprove is 56. Quinnipiac 41, disapprove 54. And when you step back and look at and CNN also has a new poll out. And again, Trump's numbers haven't really moved that much. So Trump has very steady numbers. He's doing nothing whatsoever to improve his standing beyond his base.
You weren't done. Okay.
Right. And we know about the base. But the CNN poll is especially interesting because it has a lot of information about the Russia probe. None of it good for Trump.
Well, it shouldn't be. It's a peek into his career of criminality.
Right. Well, but the bottom line there is that people are taking the Russia stuff extremely seriously.
Oh, I would warn against that. That's very dangerous.
I mean, well over 56% of the population thinks it's a serious issue. And so the idea that it won't have any impact because the Trump base is locked in, I think, is wrongheaded.
Oh. Well, all politics is national, and I do want to warn against running candidates tailored to local issues. And by the way, aside from their being very strong on defense, all of these Democrats picking candidates that suit their district is only pushing me to become more economically anxious and Republican. So please stop.
Yeah, exactly. So please stop that. Ryan Struck points out that the Trump approval rating by gender in the CNN poll is a little bit remarkable here. Not surprising, but remarkable nonetheless. Men approve of Trump 50%, disapprove 46%, so it's pretty much mixed picture there. Women, 33% approve, 61% disapprove.
Women. I don't know. Okay.
So that's got a very impressive
sort of thing you can say.
Yeah, but that's a pretty impressive gender gap there.
I would say so.
Anyway, 2/3 of Americans, including majorities across party lines, would like to see Special Counsel Mueller try to finish the investigation before voters go to the polls to elect the new Congress. I totally get that. I would like to see Trump indicted and jailed before next week.
Right. Sure. I would like to see him. I don't know. Yeah, I got a wish list. I mean, if there's things you'd like wrapped up before the election, just pile them on. We'll see what we can do.
But a growing share of voters say the investigation will matter to their vote this fall. That's really the point.
Yes.
So the idea that Trump is winning the argument because he spouts a bunch of nonsense on Fox News doesn't follow. It does not follow. That's not how it works.
Okay. Good. Did everybody hear that? Yes. Good.
I hope so.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're on the video.
Even if he doesn't finish the investigation, you are allowed to evaluate the progress to date when you go to the polls.
Anyway, so that's it with the polling. Maybe one more I'll throw in because I just think it's really interesting.
All right.
And that is that in New Jersey, Congressional District 3, that's Representative Tom MacArthur. You may remember him as the person who resurrected trying to repeal Obamacare at the last minute. Which was able to get through the House but not the Senate because of MacArthur, who's supposed to be a moderate. He's running against a Democrat named Andy Kim.
Okay. Hi,
and
Andy.
the race is tied. Monmouth has a poll out yesterday, and Monmouth, you may recall, is one of those pollsters that gives you different models.
Oh, right. Yes.
Surge model or regular model. Overall, 46% of the district approves of Trump, and 49 disapprove. So it's a Republican leaning district. Even there, Trump is a little bit underwater. Okay. The Eastern Ocean County section, which is located mainly in the New York media market, is very strong Republican, and Trump has support. MacArthur leads there 47-32. The Western Burlington County section, which is located in the Philadelphia market, and Kim leads 47-37 there.
Okay.
So the different media markets will see different ads playing out.
Yes. Great place to put a coat factory if you're thinking of opening one.
Yeah, Burlington. So the way that it works out, though, when you look at the polling, is the standard model has Kim 45, MacArthur 44. Remember, MacArthur's an incumbent and a relatively powerful Republican congressman. And in the Dem Surge model that they're using, Kim beats MacArthur 46-43. So you have the incumbent under 45%, and this is August, and I think he's in trouble.
Yeah, that would be bad news for your incumbent, and that's okay with us.
So interestingly, so the MacArthur campaign was not happy, and they wrote, "This Monmouth poll has a fatal flaw. It chooses to ignore the history of how living, breathing people actually vote in these elections.
Really?
The notion that Tom MacArthur is going to get 47% in Ocean County or win by just 15 points there only exists in Andy Kim's wildest fantasies. President Trump and Lieutenant Governor Guadagno both won this district. Together, they averaged 64% of the vote. Combine that with the two best county Republican organizations in the state, and we're going to win comfortably."
Okay.
And by the way, the more voters learn about Andy Kim's radical far-left positions and the fact he was caught cheating on his property taxes, the less they will like him.
That makes him smart.
So the pollster says, well, I usually respond simply with a statement that we stand by our track record, but I'll go into more detail here. So I've heard from a number of New Jersey Republicans are looking at the 2016 and 2017 elections as the benchmark for turnout. That's the real fatal flaw here. Turnout won't look like those cycles. As a result of this year's special elections, and Monmouth's polling of them have shown. As to our accuracy in New Jersey's 3rd District, Monmouth's polling in 2014 correctly showed MacArthur winning his first race by 10 points, when every other poll showed a tighter contest. And for good measure, we also nailed MacArthur's margins in both Ocean and Burlington counties. As to the current poll, it's important to remember that this is where the race stands as of August. We don't know what November will bring, but right now, it's not looking good for MacArthur, says the pollster.
Cool. I'll take it.
So I like that. I like that exchange.
Yeah.
And I like the pointing out that you can't look at 2017 and 2016, especially 2016, a presidential race, and say, okay, that's our benchmark for turnout.
Yeah, I would imagine that. Well, the 2016 presidential race shouldn't be the benchmark for anything.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Okay. Well, nice job over at Monmouth. Putting the mouth back in Monmouth.
Mouth, yeah, I suppose. So other things, studies and papers and musings suggest that Joe Manchin really is not in trouble at all, and so the fact that Republicans thought that was going to be an easy pickup in a red state turned out not to be true. And again, step back and look at the whole big picture. Election's still looking pretty good for the Democrats.
Okay, I'll take it. That's a good deal,
right?
So if the election were held tomorrow...
If the election were held tomorrow, we win. But at the same time, you wouldn't be able to really judge the impact of Omarosa's book on the election because she's got more tapes.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm not certain whether I care if she does, in the sense of, like, is that true?
Somebody said on Twitter, this is a really interesting argument. It's like watching the Dallas Cowboys play the Boston, the New England Patriots, and like nobody cares.
Right.
We're just rooting for injuries.
I know. I think you and I will probably give up saying that now that we know how catastrophic the injuries are. But we're just we're rooting for people to be maybe suspended for taking a knee, and then we'll support them and send them money from GoFundMe.
Right. But the question is, can both lose? Can they both go away?
I hope so.
And just again, I think the fascinating thing here is that unlike, let's say, the Democratic Party,
that one, yeah, right,
or even the traditional media, Omarosa is playing on Trump's home field, playing his game
That is true.
and beating him at it.
I like that. Maybe he's not even good at the game he's supposed to be best at. The world's greatest. I mean, I wondered when somebody would catch on. It seems like such an easy game. You just have to be willing to, live through or not care about people calling you a liar.
Right. You have to not
That's
care
tough
about
for
what
me.
people think about you and just go for the money. And if you take that attitude, you can take Trump on. And that's exactly what she does.
Yeah.
And you have to step back a little bit and look at what she's doing. She's a 15-year trained reality TV personality.
Guess that's true.
Absolutely untrustworthy, but you can't look at it in terms of trust. I saw Bret Stephens, the conservative columnist for the New York Times, trying to analyze this on cable TV, wrongly, of course.
Why would you try? All right.
And his analysis was, oh my gosh, as soon as Omarosa is shown to have a flaw in her reasoning, logic, or truth-telling, then the whole thing falls apart and Trump is helped by this, just like what happened with Michael Wolff.
Right.
No, not the same at all. Michael Wolff was somebody
that
who the
didn't
rest of the media despised and was only too happy to hack to pieces. Omarosa doesn't care about any of that. And you can't judge this based on whether Omarosa has the sobriety of a judge or, the gravitas of a senator. That's not how it plays. This is stuff that plays out on the pages of the National Enquirer and magazines like that at the newsstand. And you can't step back and say, okay, I'm going to analyze this as a typical political discussion. That's not what this is.
True. Also, I think they got Wolf wrong. But
I think they got Wolf wrong too, but they very much get Omarosa wrong.
Yeah.
People are talking about this, and she's doing this very cleverly because she's doling out little bits of the tapes that she has bit by bit. I said this. I don't believe you. I have this tape. Oh my gosh, it says exactly what you said.
Oh my.
I said this other thing. Well, I certainly don't believe you that. Well, I have this tape and it says that. And now I'm saying I have other tapes I haven't shown you. And now I'm going to make you at least pay half attention because the last two tapes actually backed up what I said. You don't know that the other tapes I have do that. Maybe they don't, but I've given you enough material so you cannot ignore me. And I'm doing it every third or fourth day so that I'm making you watch this story the entire week and knocking all the other stuff off of television. Trump wanted to talk about the firing of Peter Strzok and how corrupt the FBI is. He couldn't because this was the story that people were talking about.
It's been successful.
Exactly.
I would like to see her take it on the road, maybe do rallies where she releases bits of the tape and people come and cheer.
Obviously,
and,
she's going to be Michael Avenatti's running mate.
That may be true, but only after one of them loses the primary to the other. And
Right. Now, don't get me wrong. She's a completely, totally flawed character, and I don't trust her one bit. And I think half of what she's telling isn't true. And of course, the other side of this story is, what if there is a tape with Trump using the N-word? Who would care? Don't we already know everything we know about Trump? And the answer is, if you're media, yes. If you're the general public, no. Just like the Mueller report, which I've been talking about for months, you think you know everything about it, therefore it's not a bombshell when it comes out. That's not how the public is looking at it. They are not paying attention. And if they hear that Mueller indicted, let's say, a Don Jr. or made Trump a co-conspirator unindicted, this would be an incredible bombshell, even though you knew it was coming. Same thing is true with this tape. And one of the more interesting discussions I heard is the whole concept here that white people don't understand being a racist to the point where, like, they define it as, did you use the N-word or not? Because that's the only thing that matters.
And
to simplify it to its simplest essence.
Yes.
Oh, you did, therefore you're a racist, but you didn't, therefore you're not. Yeah. And that's how a lot of them look at Trump and themselves.
That's probably true. And maybe it even explains the passion with which some people argue the very stupid, well, black people use it all the time. Why can't I? That seems like such a losing argument.
You're absolutely right.
But they put so much passion into it. Maybe that if that's the way they measure racism, the only way I can prove I'm not one is take this weapon away too, because I'm not going to stop using that word.
Exactly. So, there it is. And so, it'll be interesting to see if and when that plays out, how that goes.
Yeah.
So that's my segment for today. Thanks for putting up with the technical issues.
Hey, what else was I going to do? Talk?
Tomorrow is Thursday, so hopefully I'll be back on the show and we'll use this method.
Okay. As we wait for Skype to figure out whether you're Russian or not.
Yeah, I suppose. And
okay.
Yep.
Well, all right. That's well. Thank you. It's a good start, and lots to go on there. And thank you for bringing us in ahead of the curve on the Connecticut 5 race. So we look totally with it and hip, like the kids are all saying.
Well, that one's dear to my heart. So
yeah. Okay.
There you have it.
Well done. Thanks, Greg. And,
take care.
Thanks for persisting, as they might say, in trying to get on the air.
Yeah, nonetheless.
Okay.
Alrighty, take care.
Great, thanks. We'll see what this sounds like when you hang up. Whether
we'll see if I can figure out how to hang up. Otherwise, I'm on until tomorrow.
Right.
Take care.
You too. Help! They won't let us off the radio. Please stop listening, everybody. Just put some earplugs in. You'll hear me breathing, eating lunch, what have you, taking the kids out for their various errands and lessons, etc. Just please ignore all of what's going on in the background. All right. Let's see. That reminded me, our closing comments here from Greg. If I can find my way back, my desktop is in total disarray. Things that are never open are open, so having to find my way back. We'll get back to the Elizabeth Warren story in a minute. I was reminded by the discussion that I had a different Brian Beutler piece, not the one that Paula read for us all those many, I think now, months ago. No, I should roll that tape at some point and just listen in again and see whether it deserves a couple of minutes sandwiched in between the rest of the stories. Trump is right to be scared of an N-word tape, Brian Beutler says. And I thought it was interesting sort of as counterpoint to so many other comments, some reasoned, some offhand, whatever. But, the generally cynical view that, it won't matter. His base is so locked in, they don't care. And besides which, they'll probably cheer. And lots of people have been cynically commenting, and I can excuse it. And I definitely, I feel some of the same sentiment. Just offhandedly commenting on Twitter or elsewhere where you don't really have to put that much behind the comments you make by design. Things like, Trump's approval rating will probably go up if there's an N-word tape. And, as Greg was commenting, the real truth of the matter is the vast majority of people in the country, even the vast majority of people, if you just discuss the universe of people who are likely to vote, just really aren't tuned into what happens literally on an hourly basis here. We're way, way, way more dialed into following the news, and it might be bad for our health in doing so. But, it actually takes a while. It really will hit like a ton of bricks with some people. Anyway, I don't know if that's what Brian is arguing here, but I thought I would put this article aside, and it might make a good thing to explore before our next break. Trump is right to be scared of an N-word tape. Here is a story about 3 tapes. One that does exist, one that might exist, and one that doesn't. The first one, the Access Hollywood tape, cemented the foundational myth of Donald Trump's presidency, that he is invulnerable to political scandals of his own making. Trump explained on that tape that he exploits his star power to, the story, grab women, where they're grabbing them to, with impunity, and 1 month after it surfaced, he became president. Hat tip Julian Assange and James Comey, asterisks the two of them. All right. It became commonplace after that experience for jaded liberals and savvy politicos alike to either ascribe Trump mystical political powers or imagine that the 63 million people who voted for him were all hopelessly brainwashed or vile, or some combination of the two. If that tape didn't matter, then nothing could possibly matter. There are many asterisks to this story, including the 2 above. Glad I mentioned them. Because a simpler telling clashes with the awful reality that he is still president. On the day the Access Hollywood footage came to light, Trump's support in the polls was falling, and it fell further once voters processed what they saw. No, it didn't cost him the presidency, but it has in many ways defined it. Trump lost the popular vote by a significant margin. He entered office not just historically unpopular, but widely and rightly loathed. That antipathy inspired a vast worldwide protest the day after his inauguration and has fueled the largest social justice movements the country has ever seen, or rather, has seen in decades. I'm so used to that construction, ever, but no. He has never escaped the taint of that tape, and that's a dangerous way of putting it. Anger over it persists both for the obvious reason, let's get serious, please, and because the majority of the country is concerned about the knock-on effect for our culture that a man could confess to serial sexual assault, maintain a frothing political base, and be rewarded with high office. That is problematic and troubling, and I like the use of knock-on, by the way. That tape mattered a lot, for good and for bad. Trump knows it matters, even as he pretends it did not. And by the way, it was the only tape that I know of, that ever really had him worried and bunkered and considering how to apologize. Nothing else has ever done that. This explains the odd contrast we're seeing today between Trump, who frets openly that a different damaging tape, documenting him using the N-word in conversations on the set of The Apprentice, will come to light, and once bitten, twice shy liberals who are convinced that if such a tape emerges, it will have, at most, a fleeting impact on American politics. This is the tape that might exist. Its shadow has been with us since 2016, but it is eclipsing the political news cycle once again, thanks to Trump's former aide, Omarosa Manigault Newman, who alleges in a new book that Trump has a casual relationship with the N-word. So, very interesting. Let's make sure that our music is properly cued here for the last 30 seconds. This is not a hoax, like the 2008 rumor that Michelle Obama had been recorded mocking and disparaging white people. The Obama campaign was unfazed by those rumors at the time because the candidate and his wife knew they were false, both in their particulars and in the way they were designed to caricature the Obamas as loose-lipped, angry black people. That's what it looks like when a tape definitely doesn't exist. We'll be back with more of this after a short break. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue on with this piece in Crooked from Brian Beutler, and I don't know how many other things we've read from Crooked that weren't him. It's a good question. He's dominating the franchise for us anyway. Where we left off talking about the tape that didn't exist was the Michelle Obama Whitey tape. By the way, one comment I would add with respect to the, as Brian says, jaded belief that an N-word tape would not harm Trump. I will add, just like what Greg had added earlier, one of the things that might make such a tape even yet more damaging is that there's a player in the game, Omarosa, who knows appears to know the reality TV / manipulation of the mass media game pretty well. I don't know. She's not as proven long term as Trump is. That's true. But that there's a dedicated player whose chief ambition appears to be making the story drag out and appears to provide the right, I don't know what, I guess, well, we'll just use the French, the je ne sais quoi, the I don't know what. If you say it in French, it's a lot. I don't know what sounds like, well, that person doesn't know what he's talking about. He does not know. Je ne sais quoi? Well, if I don't speak French, or even if you do, that sounds like a prepared statement about not knowing. And, well, it makes it work somehow. But I do think that the tape plays out differently. The Access Hollywood tape played out differently, I think, just because of the shocking nature of the content. I mean, it really was something a bit new. But a tape that has a personality like Omarosa behind it and interested career-wise in making sure that there's someone, her, on the air somewhere at all times discussing it and driving the story does make it a different kind of story. I don't know how long that magic lasts, whether it's perpetual as it has been for Trump or what, but I guess we'll see. Now, picking up again, that being the tape that might exist, onto the tape, I guess, that doesn't. Remember, that was the Michelle Obama Whitey tape. And We left off by with Brian's comment that the Obama campaign was unfazed by the rumors of the tape because the candidate and his wife knew that they were false, both in their particulars and in the way they were designed to caricature the Obamas as angry black people, right? That's what, and their reaction is what it looks like when a tape definitely doesn't exist. We don't know if Trump's tape does exist, but it isn't hucksterism to suspect that it might. Trump's racism is largely unconcealed. There is ample testimony about how he talks when he thinks no one's listening, and most importantly, Trump, like Obama, can't guarantee that it does not. And that is actually prophetic, because this, I believe, well, I'm not 100% certain it is prophetic. I thought I had this one pocketed before yesterday's exchange with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, in which she was asked basically, can you guarantee that that tape doesn't exist? And she was unwilling to guarantee that there was no possible way you were going to catch Trump on tape using the N-word. Which is a good thing in the sense that, you know, she finally has been chastened not to just blatantly lie. But it's also, of course, very telling because she usually does just blatantly lie. And the fact that she wouldn't do so again is perhaps very telling. I mean, and probably means, yeah, I know that that tape exists. I'm positive that it does. I'll be caught out as a liar again if I guarantee that it doesn't. And I don't know why this being caught out this time would bother her in ways that it has never bothered her before. But I don't know. Maybe it's a cumulative thing and it's just getting to her. So it's interesting that no one can guarantee that it doesn't exist. And yes, it's true. Trump's racism largely unconcealed. I noticed at some point Oliver Willis, taking a jab at this whole thing yesterday, tweeting out, I have tapes of Trump calling Mexicans rapists. I don't know if anybody heard those. And of course that was widely heard, and I guess just contributes to the jaded feeling among certain liberals, and partially myself included, that these things just don't seem to matter to Trump and the idiots who love him. But maybe that's not who we're really talking about here. All right, picking back up with the story. When we last left off, the importance of Trump being unable to guarantee that such a tape doesn't exist, even though he tries to do so, with the embedded tweet found here, sent Mark Burnett's way. Mark Burnett called to say that there are no tapes, in caps, of The Apprentice where I use such a terrible and disgusting word as attributed by wacky and deranged Omarosa. Who's an N? Anyway, you know how he goes with this. I don't have that word in my vocabulary and never have, and that's going to be damaging. She made it up. Look at her many recent quotes saying, and he trails off with the ellipsis, and who cares what he follows that up with? You get the flavor of it. Do you really need to know exactly how Donald Trump says it? No. And it's also not here, so I'm not going to read it to you. To belabor the obvious, which is Brian's prerogative here, it's his article, if Trump weren't comfortable tossing around the N-word, he'd know a tape of him saying it couldn't exist and would thus not fear its emergence. The fact that he sought an assurance that no tapes would surface is tantamount to a confession that he has used the word freely and merely contends the evidence doesn't exist or has been destroyed. And the fact that he's alarmed at all suggests he knows such a tape might not only exist, but imperil his already teetering presidency. Trump is right to worry. And those who are jaded by the history of the Access Hollywood tape are wrong to be so categorical. As revealing and embarrassing as Trump's enduring popularity with Republican voters is, as easy as it is to imagine them as a kind of unbreakable dam, I trust Trump to know where he's vulnerable better than I trust my own cynicism about self-identified Republican voters. I don't know. It's hard to say trust, but okay. Those voters have cheered or tolerated all of Trump's racism, but that is racism as it should be defined. As I noted last week, and we missed it, Millions of Americans believe racism only describes people who use forbidden slurs in casual conversation. And this begins to sound like what Greg was talking about here. Hearing Trump do that would, as a matter of almost mathematical certainty, be a turning point for some of them, and Trump can't really afford to lose even a small sliver of his remaining support. Like the Access Hollywood tape. An N-word tape would thrust Trump into a severe crisis, and like the Access Hollywood tape, we might then confront the possibility that Trump survives it, leaving his millions of dead enders feeling further empowered in their bigotries. But that's no reason to look away. We are not indulging conspiracy theories or being naive about politics to think a tape like this might exist and would matter. It's a story that needs to be run to ground. And I hope people will be on that today. I don't know whether that's where Brian is today or whether you're the one that's supposed to be running it to ground. But a good point, a good observation, and holding the door open for a serious impact when that tape finally emerges, no matter who it is that's been holding it. All right. Let's see. Let's catch up on a couple of other comments and a couple of other directions that have been suggested in the past hour or so that we've been on the air. Let's see. Scrolling back a little bit. Let's see. D. Gordon Liddy chiming in about Nethercutt. Remember the George Nethercutt comment that we threw in there almost randomly? Nethercutt also famously promised to serve no more than 3 years, or was it 3 terms, perhaps? I mean, serving no more than 3 years means leaving in the middle of the second term. I don't know. I get the idea, though. One of those term limits believers who then later rescinded his pledge. Nethercutt also famously promised to serve something, no more than 3 years or 3 terms. I think the 3 terms thing was the contract with America designated term limit that they were aiming at. I think they were actually 12 years. And the more radical, I guess the proto Tea Party / Freedom Caucus types for whom the contract with America was not radical or conservative enough, they were going with a 6-year term limit. Or perhaps 6 years in the House and 12 in the Senate, whatever it was. Foley was a 30-year incumbent, of course, at the time, who fought voter-passed term limits in Washington and won. And, of course, anyway, so what Nethercutt promised was no more than 3 terms, I think, whether it was years or terms, and, of course, served 5. So I don't recall him retiring in the middle either or promising to do so. So my guess is no more than 3 terms, but I'll serve 5. And, basically no one noticed. The term limits thing was a very, very strange place, I must say. All right, Rebecca Romans has this comment, noting, of course, QAnon, remember them, originated as a grift. Color me surprised. Let's see what she's talking about. She's got the tweet of Robert McGuire embedded herein. Robert McGuire working for Open Secrets DC. Tracking dark money. McGuire has this to say. NBC traces QAnon back to 3 people who sparked the initial conversations that attracted followers whom they then used as a grift to get money for QAnon, quote, research. The most damning evidence, logging in as Q during a live stream. Interesting. This is from NBC News. Let's open up the story and wade through it. Let's see how long it is. It's not terribly long. We won't take the rest of the show, but maybe we should wade through it or should we look? There's an included highlight here with actual highlighting. But now I'm curious. Maybe we'll take a look at the whole story here. This filed yesterday from NBC News. Let's see. Brandy Zadrozny and Ben Collins get the byline in this one. How 3 conspiracy theorists took Q and sparked QAnon. I should like to hear this theory. I hope it's not just a conspiracy theory about this conspiracy theory. Pushing the theory on to bigger platforms proved to be the key to QAnon's spread and the originator's financial gain. I wish I could make money like this. Wouldn't I feel guilty about it? Yes, it would. All right. I don't know if that makes any difference. What are we looking at here? A person holding a large Q sign at the Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania rally on August 2nd, 2018. He loves Wilkes-Barre. He's there a lot. All right. In November 2017, a small-time YouTube video creator and two moderators of the 4chan website, and that's been at the heart of a lot of suspicion about QAnon, that it was just a joke because of its 4chan origins. Okay, so November 2017, small-time YouTube video creator, two moderators from 4chan, one of the most extreme message boards on the internet, if you don't count 8chan, banded together and plucked out of obscurity an anonymous and cryptic post from the many conspiracy theories that populated the website's message board. Over the next several months, they would create videos, a Reddit community, a business, and an entire mythology based off the 4chan posts of Q, the pseudonym of a person claiming to be a high-ranking military officer. I did not realize it was military. The theory they espoused would become QAnon, and it would eventually make its way from those message boards to national media stories and the rallies of President Donald Trump. Now, the people behind that effort are at the center of a fractious debate among conspiracy enthusiasts. Enthusiasts, so that means we got to throw in the enthusiasms, although that also means that, let's see, that's a good advanced warning that the player isn't working.
Enthusiasms.
All right, well, now we got it back online, and that'll help us with the end of the show and the next break. For a pause here for a second, I'm reminded of, I guess, their mention that the QAnon theorists starting to show up at rallies, et cetera, et cetera. Wasn't there some months ago an attempt at a Washington rally / march for QAnon, specifically the QAnon community? And it, too, had a very, very, embarrassingly low turnout, just like the last Unite the Right rally that they attempted to have downtown in Washington, D.C. And although different reasons, perhaps, are given for the low attendance, I just wanted to kind of draw that parallel there. We are, I think, rightly convinced of the widespread popularity, not among the general populace, but among lunatics of the right. In other words, since they were able to assemble such a large crowd at Charlottesville, we took them seriously in the sense that I think there really are this many people, and it's a dangerous thing, who believe this outrageous nonsense. And the fact that they attempted to have a QAnon gathering in Washington and likewise gathered only a smattering of people, really like a few dozen perhaps at best, made us dismiss, in addition to the wackiness of their particular theory, made us dismiss QAnon, and I think rightly done there too. But they've enjoyed a resurgence, I think, because of the visibility that they've gotten through the rallies, which is a dangerous thing, and the media perhaps ought to give some consideration to their role in that. How they would do it differently, I couldn't guess for you at the moment, but it's clear that, they just enjoy much wider recognition because of the free media that's available to them. The press sends cameras to the rallies, and then they wave the giant cues, and people get interested, and reporters write stories. And although the stories are about how crazy those people are, and can you really believe it, it just perpetuates the story and gets more people interested in it. And if they're weak-minded and Trump enamored, they become QAnon enthusiasts, and that's all there is to that story. But when they try to gather them physically, it turns out that there really are only a very, very few of them. And though there are probably thousands more out there that made no attempt to make it to Washington, D.C., you can kind of extrapolate these things backward. And the rule of tens is, as it applies to normal-ish people over at Daily Kos anyway, where we sort of think, anything you ask people to do, about 10% of them would be willing to go along with. it doesn't have to be a crazy thing or a weird thing or even a really obviously great thing, only generates about 10% response. And as you filter your way down, how many people would show up physically for something? If you ask them online to show up, about 10% of your community actually sees the request, and about 10% reads it, and about 10% respond to it, and about 10% of the people who would say they would show up would really show up, and you can back it up from there. And I was just wondering if maybe this was more revealing about the ultimate weakness of the Unite the Right crew, that in truth they had this one spectacular moment at Charlottesville because, in many cases it was a lot easier for the people, the rural folks who believed in this garbage, to get to Charlottesville and less difficult and more tempting to do that than to drag your way all the way to D.C., which is a place they would rather not be. And, of course, also lots of theories about how the pushback in the year since Charlottesville has shrunk the ranks of those willing to show up at such a thing. But it may be that ultimately QAnon is no bigger and no smaller than the faction that's truly dedicated behind Unite the Right as well, and in many cases they're the same people. Just thinking out loud here about this. Let's continue with the QAnon story because we're promised a real breakthrough here. Where were we? Yes. So we found out about Q and QAnon because they would show up and wave signs at the Trump rallies, and because TV thinks that they have to cover everything the president does, even though they didn't cover everything the last president did, or the one before him, or the one before him, or the one before him, this time they really think they have to. Now, the people behind that effort are at the center of a fractious debate among conspiracy theorists, some of whom believe the three people who first popularized the QAnon theory are promoting it in order to make a living. What horrors. Others suggest that these original followers actually wrote Q's mysterious posts. So we're not even sure about that. Okay, while the identity of the original author or authors behind Q is still unknown, the history of the conspiracy theory's spread is well documented through YouTube videos, social media posts, Reddit archives, and public records reviewed by NBC News. NBC News found that the theory can be traced back to three people who sparked some of the first conversation about QAnon, and in doing so attracted followers who they then asked to help fund QAnon, quote, research. QAnon is a convoluted conspiracy theory, you all know it, with no apparent foundation in reality. The heart of it asserts that for the last year, the anonymous Q has taken to the fringe internet message boards of 4chan and 8chan to leak intelligence about Trump's top-secret war with a cabal of criminals run by politicians like Hillary Clinton and the Hollywood elite. Rawr, those politicians, the Hollywood elite. There is no evidence for these claims, but you can't prove that there isn't none, or whatever. Anyway, in addition to peeking into the mainstream, the theory has been increasingly linked to real-world violence, and that's the big problem. In recent months, QAnon followers have allegedly been involved in a foiled presidential assassination plot, a devastating wildfire in California, and an armed standoff with local law enforcement officers in Arizona. I didn't know about the wildfire. Also, I didn't know about the assassination plot. Why would they be trying to do that? I have no idea. There are some links here we could follow, but let's not get too distracted. But before we do continue, again, I just want to point out another parallel that sort of occurs to me. The increasing link to real-world violence, that too has a parallel in the Unite the Right story as well. Part of the QAnon appeal lies in its game-like quality. Interesting observation. Probably very true. Followers wait for clues left by Q on the message board. When the clues appear, believers dissect the riddle-like posts alongside Trump's speeches and tweets and news articles in an effort to validate the main narrative that Trump is winning a war against evil. And that's a great observation. I think really something formulaic that a future hoaxer or, even a legitimate entity might take away. The game-like quality. I think that's really true. I mean, I've seen, People just love that, particularly online people. They love sharing their ability to parse things and game things out. And I mean, we do that with procedure. Couldn't it be said that the game-like quality, though it was being used to very different ends and with considerably more evidence to back it up, wasn't that really what drove, for instance, the inquiry into who is Jeff Gannon / Guckert in Talon? Remember the old story, Talon News, and the reporter who was admitted to the George W. Bush White House asking all sorts of softball-loaded and leading pro-Republican, pro-war questions, and our interest in teasing out who he was and how he got there was very much game-like. And with almost anything, you don't have to go back that far at all. But people love to try to figure stuff out. People are trying to do it right now. What is for instance, Mueller got? And does something in the language of the latest indictment give us a hint as to what might be coming next? People love that stuff. It doesn't matter that it's got no basis in reality, so long as the game is defined as ignore you can just leave aside the truth of what's in this post. Let's just try and parse this thing just for the sheer joy of it. I think that's really something that could be exploited in the future. So game theorists and behavioral psychologists, take note. Use your powers for good, not evil, but perhaps use something from out of this. There are now dozens of commentators who dissect Q posts on message boards, in YouTube videos, and on their personal pages. But the theory was first championed, we want to get back to this story, by a handful of people who worked together to stir discussion of the Q posts, eventually pushing the theory onto bigger platforms and gaining followers, a strategy that proved to be the key to QAnon's spread and the originator's financial gain. So now, the Anons, let's find out a little bit more. Before Q, there was a wide variety of Anon, or anonymous, 4chan posters, all claiming to have special government access. And remember, by the way, the curious popularity of early Trump administration Twitter accounts that claim to be like rogue White House aides, etc., and alternative views being tweeted out by people allegedly inside of the various cabinet-level departments, etc. Some more obviously not true than others, let's say, and others simply adopting the format and running with it from there. Before Q, again, there was a wide variety of anonymous Anon 4chan posters, all claiming to have special government access. In 2016, there was FBI Anon, a self-described, quote, high-level analyst and strategist, unquote, offering intel about the 2016 investigation into the Clinton Foundation. Then came HLI Anon, an acronym for high-level insider. So that's how you know he's high-level. It says, I'm high-level. Who posted about various dubious conspiracies in riddles, including one that claimed Princess Diana, really, had been killed because she found out about 9/11 beforehand and had tried to stop it. Then CIA Anon, a CIA intern, I'm sure they have interns, who took to the boards in early 2017 and last August called White House Insider Anon, or WH anyway. WH Insider Anon offered a supposed preview that something was, quote, going to go down, unquote, regarding the DNC and leaks. QAnon was just another unremarkable part of the Anon genre until November of 2017, when two moderators of the 4chan board where Q posted predictions, who went by the usernames Pamphlet Anon and Baruch the Scribe, Baruch, B-A-R-U-C-H, which Hebrew readers would be used to saying Baruch, Baruch the Scribe, who reached out to Tracy Diaz, according to Diaz's blogs and YouTube videos. Baruch the Scribe, in reality a self-identified web programmer from South Africa named Paul Ferber, confirmed that account to NBC News. So I guess they're on the right track with that one. A bunch of us decided that the message needed to go wider, so we contacted YouTubers who had been commenting on the Q drops, Ferber said, in an email. And now time for our music to play us out during the last paragraph or so that we can fit in before the break. Diaz, a small-time YouTube star who once hosted a talk show on the fringe right-wing network Liberty Movement Radio, had found moderate popularity with a couple of thousand views for her YouTube videos analyzing WikiLeaks releases and discussing the Pizzagate conspiracy, a baseless theory, as you know, that alleged a child sex ring was being run out of a Washington pizza shop. The most famous of their crazy conspiracy theories. We'll continue with this one after this. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. Let's continue with our reading of NBC News' post about their sleuth work behind, or trying to find out who's behind the QAnon conspiracy theory and its popularity. We left off by talking about the posters, the 4chan posters, enlistment of, what's the first name here? Tracy Diaz, a small-time YouTube star, tied up with the fringe right wing to begin with, and interested in the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. As Diaz tells it in a blog post detailing her role in the early days of QAnon, she banded together with the two moderators. Their goal, according to Diaz, was to build a following for QAnon, which would mean bigger followings for them as well. On November 3rd, 2017, just 6 days after the first 4chan posts from Q, Diaz posted a video entitled /Paul, that would be, I guess, the Reddit subreddit that they were on there, /Paul Q clearance anon. Is it #happening? In which she introduced the conspiracy theory to her audience. I do not typically do videos like this, she said. Yeah, of course. But citing Q's very specific and kind of eerie posts, Diaz explained that she would be covering the 4chan posts just in case this stuff turns out to be legit, because honestly, it kind of seems legit, which is of course a way of saying I believe this. That, whether you really do or you're just doing it for financial gain, I don't know, but okay. That video, which has been viewed nearly 250,000 times, and that's not a lot really in YouTube world, to be honest, made Diaz one of the earliest people to seize on Q posts and decipher them for a conspiracy-hungry audience. Diaz followed them then with dozens more Q-themed videos, each containing a call for viewers to donate through links to her Patreon and PayPal accounts. Sort of like we do. Diaz's YouTube channel now boasts more than 90,000 subscribers. We ain't got that. And her videos have been watched over 8 million times. More than 97,000 people follow her on Twitter. Diaz, who emerged from bankruptcy in 2009, gee whiz, says in her YouTube videos that she now relies on donations from patrons funding her YouTube research as her sole source of income. Diaz declined to comment on this story. Because I cover Q, I got an audience, Diaz acknowledged in a video that NBC News reviewed last week before she deleted it. To reach a more mainstream audience, the next section begins, older people and normies, remember that term, who on their own would have trouble navigating the fringe message boards, Diaz said in a blog post she recommended they move to the more user-friendly Reddit. Archives listing the three as the original posters and moderators show they created a new Reddit community called CBTS Stream, short for Calm Before the Storm, where subscribers soon gathered to talk all things Q. Their move to Reddit was key to QAnon's eventual spread. There, they were able to tap into larger audiences of conspiracy theorists and drive discussion with their analysis of each Q post. Okay, so that probably means, by the way, a few minutes ago when we described that they were on the /Paul board, that would likely have been the 4chan subboard, not yet the Reddit subboard. Okay, so from there, QAnon crept to Facebook, where it found new, older audiences via dozens of public and private groups. That audience started to head to 8chan to check out the original source and interact with the posts. Q posts moved from 4chan to its more toxic offshoot 8chan in November after a post claiming the original board had been, quote, infiltrated. 8chan became notorious for having no rules and even hosting child pornography. That's how no rules it really was. 8chan's owner, and by the way, do you really want to, I don't know, maybe I guess you could argue that, well, of course they would know about Pizzagate because they're into child pornography, so they would have reason to know. But then again, you might also ask, should we really be taking our advice about breaking up child sex rings from child pornographers? I don't know. They would have inside information, but wouldn't they actually be interested in not breaking those things up? And then, of course, there's the side story of, everything they accuse everybody else of is always projection, and here's more evidence of that being the case. 8chan's owner's official Twitter account marveled at the influx of older, less internet-savvy visitors to his site, drawn by QAnon. We joked about it for years, but QAnon is making it a reality. Boomers on your image board. Meanwhile, Diaz kept making videos, racking up hundreds of thousands of viewers. And again, that's a lot of people in, your everyday sense. But for YouTube, that's not a particularly popular or widespread, widely viewed source. That's very small numbers for what YouTube can generate. An indication that it's still very much the minority. Very fringy. Meanwhile, Diaz kept making videos, racking up hundreds of thousands of views. Over the next several months, Diaz and the two moderators picked up tens of thousands of followers on Reddit and YouTube, and added even more moderators to their 8chan and Reddit boards. To break into what might be considered the is in my way here, the biggest new thing in the conspiracy world, conspiracy theorist Dr. Jerome Corsi, an InfoWars editor and best-selling author of books about the deep state, had taken an interest in Q and was decoding the messages on the Reddit board. In December, Pamphlet Anon and Baruch the Scribe even made an appearance on InfoWars. Corsi has since disavowed the QAnon conspiracy and called the current Q poster a fraud, citing a supposed takeover of the channel by someone posing as Q in April. What an interesting way of disavowing it. I really like the original, but this new stuff is too crazy for me. But last week, facing backlash from his base, Corsi tweeted that he now supports the QAnon movement again and its supporters' excellent research. Soon, as Diaz explained on her blog, their expanding crew was spending all their waking hours in chat rooms on the gaming-focused forum Discord. Remember, that came up when we were reading about Steve Bannon's weird background in the gaming culture and his realization that he could exploit the weirdos of the isolated, the self-imposed isolation, really, among the weirdos of the gaming community to create a programmable ultra-right political force. Don't lose sight of that. And the use, by the way, of Discord as the main messaging and communication function among alt-right weirdos who later, emerged in the various militant groups of the alt-right. Discord plays a particularly prominent role there. So they were spending all their waking hours now in chat rooms and the game-focused Discord forum, analyzing and decoding Q messages and planning for larger dissemination of Q's message. In March, their Reddit board, which boasted some 20,000 subscribers, was shut down by Reddit for, quote, encouraging or inciting violence and posting personal and confidential information. And the moderators, Diaz and the rest, were banned from the site. Ferber had already been booted from the site for allegedly threatening to reveal the personal details of another user and was pushed out of the private Q discussion groups he had helped form. I was very definitely banished, Ferber said, noting that he believes Q's board has been taken over by imposters. It's a hard thing not to believe when everybody's anonymous. But then, Pamphlet Anon, whose real name is Coleman Rogers, had developed grander plans. NBC was able to determine Rogers' identity through property records that link the address where his business is registered to, you'll never believe it, his parents' home, and to photos from his personal social media account. Those photos show him to be the same person who appears on YouTube as Pamphlet Anon. Rogers did not respond to calls seeking comment, but acknowledged his receipt of messages from NBC News via his website's Twitter, writing in part, all caps, "We do not talk to fake news," except they've got you, so they're real. Kicked off Reddit, Rogers hatched a new plan. He would replace the mainstream media. Oh, what a good idea. Often a target of Q's posts, with a constantly streaming YouTube network made up of the self-described researchers who were putting together Q's clues. Within a month, Rogers, 31, and his wife, Christina Urso, 29, had launched the Patriots Soapbox, a round-the-clock live-streamed YouTube channel for QAnon study and discussion. Interesting, and not that far removed from the original thoughts about what we might do with Daily Kos Radio, a round-the-clock live-streamed, not necessarily YouTube channel, but streaming channel with my own show here. And, well, we had originally hoped the shows of several other editors and community members as well. Or something that was at least available to us round the clock that we could break in with and do live broadcasts of breaking news. We never got to that, but we are still stuck with this. You have to listen to me again. All right. So where were we? The audio channel is, or the channel rather, is in effect a broadcast of a Discord chat room with constant audio commentary from a rotating cast of volunteers and moderators with sporadic appearances by Rogers and Urso. In April, Urso registered Patriots Soapbox LLC. What do you know? And in Virginia at that. Rogers and Urso used their channel to call for donations that are accepted through PayPal, cryptocurrencies, or mail. Interesting combination. It was a natural progression for Rogers. A review of Rogers' Facebook page shows he has been active in internet politics and a staunch supporter of Donald Trump during the 2016 campaign, self-identifying as part of the meme war, the creation and dissemination of images and internet-style commentary that internet agitators on the Chans and Reddit credit with Trump's win. And we've discussed a bit of that, too, right? Rogers often posted memes about liberal tears, as well as the ludicrous claims that Democrats murdered children and worshipped Satan, details similar to those that would eventually form the QAnon theory. Rogers' Facebook updates waned after Trump took office, but started up again in the fall when he began posting Q messages to both confused and supportive family and friends. Rogers has publicly denied that he is the author of the Q posts, though his last visible Facebook post, published on August 2nd, hinted that he might someday be associated with the theory. $10 says, "You see my face on national news within a few weeks, saying that I'm the mysterious hacker known as QAnon." Rogers wrote a reference to a CNN segment that mistakenly referred to the website 4chan as a hacker. That would have been a dumb mistake. Didn't see it, but I believe it. Following a request for comment from NBC News, Rogers deleted every post on his Facebook profile after 2014. Following another message from a reporter informing him that NBC News had archived his page, he deleted his Facebook account entirely. Now, next section, tables turned. As QAnon picked up steam, growing skepticism over the motives of Diaz, Rogers, and the others, the other early QAnon supporters anyway, led some in the internet's conspiracy circles to turn their paranoia on the group. Eventually, they all eat themselves, yes? Recently, some QAnon followers have accused Diaz and Rogers of profiting from the movement by soliciting donations from their followers. Well, obviously they did. Other pro-Trump online groups have questioned the roles that Diaz and Rogers have played in promoting Q, pointing to a series of slip-ups that they say show Rogers and Diaz may have been involved in the theory from the start. Though I guess the claim their claim is they just picked up on these awesome clues. Those accusations have led Diaz and Rogers to both deny that they are Q and say they don't know who Q is. There is no direct proof that the group or any individual members are behind it. Still, QAnon skeptics have pointed to 2 videos as evidence that Rogers has insider knowledge of Q's account. One archived live stream appears to show Rogers logging into the 8chan account of Q. Well, that would give it away. The Patriots soapbox feed quickly cuts out after the login attempt. Sorry, leg cramp, Rogers says before the feed reappears seconds later. So what it sounds like, of course, is, okay, well, I'll log in. Oops, oh my God, I'm live streaming what I'm doing right now, and I'm showing everybody I am logging into the Q account on 8chan. I need to knock that off the air. And so quickly, I guess they go off the air and then come back, and his excuse is, well, my computer failed because my leg is cramping. And that's not often the sort of thing that will knock your computer offline, is it? Users in the associated chat room began to wonder if Rogers had accidentally revealed his identity as Q. How did you post as Q? One user wrote. In another live stream video, Rogers begins to analyze a supposed Q post on his live stream program when his co-host points out that the post in question doesn't actually appear on Q's feed and was authored anonymously. Rogers' explanation, the Q must have forgotten to sign in before posting, was criticized as extremely unlikely by people familiar with the message boards, as it would require knowledge of the posting to pick it out from among hundreds of other anonymous ones. Oops. So basically, essentially, he highlighted something that was, I guess, meant to have been posted as Q, but wasn't, and there would really be no reason to pick out one anonymous posting among hundreds and say, yeah, that was supposed to be a Q post, unless, of course, you were that person. In part because of the mounting claims against Patriots soapbox, the web's largest pro-Trump community has banned all mentions of QAnon. Reddit's 640,000 member community, r/thedonald, set up an auto-delete function for members of QAnon's for mentions of QAnon's claims. 2 moderators confirmed to NBC News, believing the group of YouTubers is making posts as Q. Still, Patriot Soapbox 24-hour live stream remains live on YouTube, which maybe they should get rid of, broadcasting to its 46,000 subscribers, and despite the growing skepticism of the group, they still have their supporters who ardently believe in the QAnon theory. The funniest thing about those who try to discredit Q, they focus on whether or not Q is real instead of on the information being provided, tweeted one follower. No one cares who Q is. We care about the truth, which is hard to explain given that they're so interested in Q. Okay, so very interesting. Not, doesn't like crack the case. We're not going to swoop in and scoop up these people and throw them in jail. I guess they still figure they haven't done anything illegal per se. But interesting that they've been able to trace some of this stuff. And once again, you're able to trace it because they were stupid and made an idiotic mistake and live streamed pictures of themselves logging into the Q account and then deny, I'm not Q. I don't know how that happened. Something leg cramp. How interesting. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. There were a couple of other things that came in. Thanks, Rebecca, for that one. Let's see. What other fun stuff have we got? There's some comments from before, Culture of Truth, noting Omarosa and Stormy Daniels share something in common, I guess, here. They don't care what other people think or say about them, and that is something that they can gives them the ability to play Trump's game and win. Largely true. And like Trump, they embrace what their critics say, own it, and then dismiss it, which disarms the media. All right. Thanks very much. Yes. D. Gordon Liddy just reminding us that, it was terms, not years, that we were thinking about when we were talking about, remember, George Nethercutt. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Anything else we want to catch up on here? There are a couple other stories we definitely want to get to. Albert Titus sent us something here too. Tweet from The Hill. Treasury, that is the department. Treasury potentially violates federal campaign law with Trump retweet about election results. something that frequently happens here, and actually something that we ought to discuss briefly as a continuing theme. The Hill's story tells us this from this morning. The Treasury Department on Wednesday retweeted a post from President Trump celebrating Republican wins in congressional elections this year, potentially violating federal campaign law. The department's official Twitter account shared a tweet from Trump touting results from elections held Tuesday night and an upcoming red wave of GOP congressional victors. Great Republican election results from last night. So far, we have the team we want. 8 for 9 in special elections. Red wave, Trump tweeted at 8:30 a.m. this morning. Treasury deleted the retweet soon after media outlets raised questions about its legality. A department spokesperson told The Hill the retweet, quote, was done in error and has been taken down. Treasury's retweet of a campaign-related post appears to risk violating the Hatch Act, a law that bans federal employees from engaging in political activity while on duty or serving in any official capacity, but which is famously impotent in actually making anybody pay for their mistakes. Several Trump administration officials have been found to have violated the Hatch Act, like Trump, by the Office of the Special Counsel, which enforces ethics rules for federal employees. The agency is not related to the special counsel Robert Mueller works as, or his investigation. That's the name of the office. Shares those words, but they're not the same thing, confusingly enough. The OSC said in March that top White House aide Kellyanne Conway violated the Hatch Act twice in TV appearances. Remember this? When she, quote, impermissibly mixed official government business with political views about candidates. The agency also warned Federal Communications Commissioner, it actually says both words, commission and commissioner, FCC Commissioner Mike O'Reilly in May that he violated the Hatch Act when he called on voters to support Trump and GOP candidates at a conservative political convention. UN Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley was also found to have violated the act by retweeting an endorsement from Trump in October. And Dan Scavino, the White House social media director, was also found to have violated the act last year after encouraging potential GOP challengers to oust Justin Amash from Michigan in an upcoming primary. Government watchdog nonprofits have also filed several other Hatch Act complaints against top Trump administration officials for tweets supporting the president's 2020 re-election campaign. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW for short, filed complaints against 10 administration officials earlier this month, including White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders and the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, Director Mick Mulvaney. What does that tell you? It tells you that they are violating the Hatch Act left and right. They don't care, and there's no real serious penalty for doing so, so they will continue to do that daily, most likely, and we'll just all sit by and say, that's not the way this is supposed to work. And yet it is the way it's working in reality. As a matter of fact, Benji Sarlin just this morning picked out exactly the same tweet and the Treasury Department retweet of it, and said, oh, hi, Hatch Act. And I saw that and retweeted it because he's exactly right. This was about 8:49 this morning. So rather than be cryptic, Benji Sarlin says, federal agencies and workers aren't allowed to get into politics on taxpayer time. When Democrats took the House in 2006, one of their oversight moves was looking into Bush officials politicking at the office, just giving the long background of Republican habits of violating the Hatch Act and not giving a good goddamn about it one way or the other. Throw that in, if you want, with this other story. Annie Carney has, the White House reporter for Politico, picking up on this and tweeting this morning, White House staffers who have a Secret Service hard pin identifying them as administration officials can, get this, flash it at the pro shop at the Trump clubs and receive the same discount that's available to club members who, by the way, pay a reported $350,000 to join the club. Isn't that an interesting way of profiteering off of your office? Although it offers a discount, so he would say, I'm not making money, I'm losing money on it. I'm giving discounts out. But why in the world should your service to the administration entitle you to discounts at a private retailer? Ethics experts say the merchandise discounts represent a disturbing blurring of lines between his private business and the presidency. Yes, Annie Carney shares the byline with Eliana Johnson on this one. Let's see if we can't cram this in. just for fun. Not that it's the most important story out there today, but continuing with the theme, there's an under-the-radar perk being offered to staffers in President Donald Trump's administration, discounts on Trump-branded merchandise sold at his Bedminster, New Jersey golf club. White House staffers who have a Secret Service hard pin identifying them as administration officials can flash it at the pro shop where Trump-branded driver head covers retail for $40 and a Trump golf polo tee goes for $90, according to the online Trump store, and receive the same discount available to club members who pay $350,000 to join the club. So in other words, a $350,000 perk for free by virtue of accepting work in the White House. Not supposed to go this way. Those discounts range from 15% off any merchandise sold in the store to 70% off clearance items, according to two staffers, and a receipt reviewed by Politico. They kept the receipts. The practice is the latest indication that being a public servant in this administration comes with special perks to sweeten the deal. The discounts available at the Bedminster Club were originally pitched by the president's daughter, Ivanka, and the president himself as a nice gesture to aides. See, they just think they're doing them a favor / moving clearance merchandise. It's a nice thing that you can do. Well, when you're a private business, you can. When you're the president of the United States, rules apply, except, of course, as we're finding out today, thanks to Benji Sarlin and others, rules don't apply. So, LOL, YOLO, nothing matters. Of course, they would come up with a discount plan, right? White House officials denied Ivanka Trump's involvement and said she was not even aware the discount existed, even though it was her idea, probably, but now she needs to escape criminal liability for it if ever any should come down. So now she knows nothing about it. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know Omarosa was fired. Gee, God damn it, I really don't love this at all. But ethics experts say the arrangement only highlights how Trump remains more entangled in his commercial properties than any president in American history. Those blurry lines between his government work and his private business, from which he never divested, are perhaps the most fuzzy when the president is spending time with government officials on the grounds of his own properties. Virginia Cantor, chief ethics counsel at Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, them again, and a former associate counsel in the Obama and Clinton administration, said the practice of offering any discounts to people identified by their Secret Service pins was absolutely wrong. Discounts are not prohibited by the Office of Government Ethics if they are available to all government employees, or if it's a standardized discount. But if they are not, the discount is considered a gift. Federal officials are also prohibited from accepting gifts in excess of $20 and are urged to decline any gifts when accepting them would raise concerns about the appearance of impropriety. It's prohibited under the standards of conduct for any government employee to accept a gift because of their official position, said Cantor. The fact is, people's access to that facility is extremely limited. It's not open to all government employees. It's limited to staff who have access to the facility, and second of all, those who are given access to the Secret Service pin. It is not okay. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said she would not comment about the discount because she enjoys it too much. But getting perks in the pro shop goes beyond White House staffers. Trump has pilfered his own stores to charm Republican lawmakers and their aides, whom he frequently invites to join him for rounds of golf at his properties in Sterling, Virginia, and Palm Beach, Florida. GOP aides have been directed to the pro shop to pick up golf apparel gratis when the president saw they were not outfitted for golf. It was not clear whether Trump later personally picked up the tab, of course not, or the business ate the extra expense. Yes, that's exactly what happened. The discounts remain under the radar, although they probably billed the RNC eventually later. The discounts remain under the radar, even within the White House. One former senior administration official said he never knew about the price chop and had always paid full price for pro shop merchandise, which you also shouldn't be doing. I overpaid big time, the former official says. Part of me wishes I knew. Part of me is glad I didn't. Other aides said they learned of a discount through the grapevine only after having paid full price. So it's not like he's being super generous here either. He's not letting anybody know that they can actually get a discount, and that's very Trumpian all by itself. Well, amazing, but not particularly new or insightful, or no kind of a bombshell either, in that did cut into our ability to return to Elizabeth Warren's plan to save capitalism, though the fun nugget of that was that she was talking about what we've always been talking about, expanding the responsibilities of corporate citizenship to take into consideration the much broader array of stakeholders beyond shareholders. We got a lot to get to for the rest of the week. Some things extremely serious, some things only partially serious. And entertaining instead, and some that will change your perspective on things in interesting ways. That yet to come in the 2 days remaining in our week here on the show. We at least have the patch available to us to bring Greg in tomorrow and wrap things up for us once again before heading into the weekend. And now, time to hand things over to the mostly working technology that powers the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. And we got a little bit extra time here to talk about what's coming up. Even Neil Cavuto's Fox Business panel was unable to fathom Trump's dog tweet about Omarosa. A drunken New York City cop on vacation unleashed racist terror on a black family after mistakenly barging into their Tennessee home.
From
What's he
Daily
doing there?
Kagro Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
ICE agents set deportation traps for immigrants seeking legal residency, and Trump's Treasury Department trying to block the Senate from continuing the financial portion of the Russia investigation. Still more coming here, too. The Office of Refugee Resettlement removed email addresses, phone numbers, and all other contact information from its website. I wonder why.